Welcome into BNC's special coverage of the Georgia election runoff debates tonight. I'm Vinny Susan along with Brittany Jones and Laverne McGee. I mean, we heard for the first time Senator Kelly Loeffler as well as Reverend Raphael Warnock, and this is the first time that we have them going head-to-head in the debate. They touched on several key issues, including the coronavirus, the economy, and of course, police reform.
And then also, if you think about it, both of these two are first-time political candidates. As we were talking about before, they never had to, well, Loeffler never actually had to run. She was appointed by the governor. And then also, this is the first time that Warnock is running as a political candidate as well. So it's very interesting to see both of them be able to battle out on the stage, but they both make sure to keep their campaign remarks is what they've ran on the past year. Vern?
Yeah, they both definitely had their key talking points. We heard Senator Loeffler continuing to try to hit home that she did not grow up rich. But of course, it was pointed out that she had access to stocks and that she sold them and made a profit off of them during the COVID-19, the early days. Then, of course, on the other side, you heard Raphael Warnock trying to talk about the fact that he did not want to defund the police as he had been accused of, but he wanted to see police reform. So certainly some interesting talking points from both candidates. Still, it seems like the voters of Georgia are going to have a tough time deciding who's lying and who's not, because both sides accused each other of telling lies.
So Daryl Forges is live right now for us in Atlanta, where the debates took place. Daryl, you're in Atlanta right now. Let's talk about some of the biggest moments we've just seen and the impact this will have on the voters.
Yeah, that's right, ladies. Good evening to the both of you. And hear what Laverne was talking about when it comes to both candidates sticking to their talking points. That was the biggest thing we saw for this hour-long debate. Of course, Kelly Loeffler was really pushing hard the radical left, calling and trying to brand Raphael Warnock as that, also saying that he will be a rubber stamp for the Democratic agenda and for Chuck Schumer. Now, for Raphael Warnock, the biggest thing that he was really talking about was saying that Loeffler was out of touch with Georgians and that, yeah, she's the richest senator right now, but she is not in touch with the Georgian voters that he is. But another thing, ladies, that was really interesting was hearing when it came to black voters, about the black issues that are affecting black Americans, especially here in Georgia. You heard Kelly Loeffler say that she does not have a racist bone in her body, and Raphael Warnock saying that he's been there for the families like Rayshard Brooks and others to those funerals, talking to those families, having a first-hand experience of what to do. Now, ladies, keep this in mind also. Kelly Loeffler is part owner of the Atlanta Dream, a WNBA team here in the Peach State. When those ladies actually were having their season this past season, they had on shirts saying "Vote Warnock" because of the ways they believe that Kelly Loeffler was not for them during the Black Lives Matter movement and the whole situation with Breonna Taylor, and they were wearing shirts saying "Vote Warnock." So it's interesting how she talked about how she's been in the black communities, talking and helping those, and saying she doesn't have a racist bone in her body, but yet her own basketball team pretty much is against what she stands for. And another thing to also keep in mind is that both candidates have a lot of money being pushed when it comes to commercials. Not only them, but also the other race between John Ossoff and David Perdue. Over $320 million in ads is being pushed through this state to try to get one of these candidates into that seat. And it's crucial for so many different reasons, ladies, as we talked about earlier. If the Republicans can keep at least one of these seats, they will, of course, continue to have control over the Senate. If the Democrats somehow win both of these seats, it will be a virtual 50-50 split in the Senate, giving the tie-breaking vote potentially to incoming Vice President Kamala Harris.
And as you mentioned, those ads, they both stuck to those messages that they have been running on all along. Do you think either of the candidates said anything that's going to help or hurt them in this election?
We're going to have to wait and see, because the biggest thing right now for both candidates is voter turnout. The biggest thing for Democrats is, hey, look, are we going to have a lot of people come out to vote even though there's not a presidential candidate at the top of the ticket? And for Republicans, historically, they usually have a good voter turnout, but things are much different now because of the situation between President Donald Trump still making these false accusations of voter fraud. And you heard the moderator, Russ Spencer, and the Atlanta journalist really push Kelly Loeffler over and over again, asking her her, does she agree with President Trump that the race here for the White House in the state of Georgia wasn't rigged? And she continued to dodge that question, saying that the president has every right to seek any legal action that he sees. So she's trying to play both sides, because President Trump was really going hard after the Secretary of State and also Governor Brian Kemp, who, keep this in mind, appointed Kelly Loeffler to take that seat vacated by Johnny Isakson for retirement just 10 months ago. So she's trying to drew this fine line of course, appeasing the people who got her to this seat in the first place, and also not to alienate those Trump voters, and hoping that they can come out for her and David Perdue on January 5th.
And lastly, Daryl, with the messages that they were hitting on so many voters, that deadline is tomorrow. So many voters are expected to get out there and register to vote. Do you think that they seal the deal on getting those last minute voters to say, hey, I'm going to come out to the polls?
That's going to be the big thing that we just, quite frankly, just don't know about. We do know that over 940,000 Georgians have applied for early mail-in ballots, so that's going to be big moving forward. But we do know that historically Republicans love to come out and vote on Election Day, so that's going to be a big thing to see exactly what's going to happen on January 5th. But for both candidates right now, trying to push with their belief and push who they are, because a lot of people really don't know who Senator Kelly Loeffler is, or who Reverend Raphael Warnock is. We know Loeffler is a businesswoman. Warnock is a pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, the church formerly pastored by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So this was the time for them to, for Georgians to really get to know both of these candidates. So the biggest hope now is that they really push what they believe and what they know, and that's going to definitely have an impact come January 5th.
All right, Daryl Ford is reporting live for us from Atlanta. Thank you so much. Well, as we mentioned, these debates are extremely important since they will determine the balance of power in Congress. A number of issues are on the ballot for black voters, and the candidates spoke to a handful tonight. BNC's White House correspondent Ariana Manise is live tonight in Washington, D.C. with a debate recap. Ariana?
Yeah, Brittany, tonight is going to be a newsmaker for days to come. That's because, you know, candidates, they're trying to take over, the Democrats rather, are trying to take over the Senate. And we're also watching to see how the Biden administration is able to drum up support among black voters in Georgia. First, we're going to start off with the Ossoff debate. We are calling this a debate, although Ossoff, he stood on the stage alone. He addressed the tough questions that many voters are seeking answers for. Take a listen.
And look, people expect me to come to a debate like this and criticize David Perdue. But it shows an astonishing arrogance and sense of entitlement for Georgia's senior U.S. senator to believe he shouldn't have to debate at a moment like this in our history.
Ossoff, he spoke to the moment of widespread illness and social unrest. He also challenged voters to reflect on his challenger David Perdue's stock trade. So following a private January briefing on the coronavirus, Perdue, he traded stocks as he publicly downplayed the pandemic's threat. His colleague, Senator Kelly Loeffler, she also did the same thing, sparking a Senate ethic investigation. During her debate with Democratic challenger Raphael Warnock, Loeffler's refusal to acknowledge the results of the 2020 presidential election and pandemic response took center stage. Take a listen.
While she's playing political games, trying to represent somebody who doesn't live in Georgia, Georgians are wondering when are they going to get some COVID-19 relief. They're wondering who is going to put small businesses in front of the large corporate giants. And they're wondering when are we going to call the people, give the people we call essential workers an essential wage.
Back in Washington, we're also watching those cabinet nominations roll in for the Biden administration. The latest announcement, Attorney General of California, Javier Becerra, he has been tapped to lead the Health and Human Services Department. Again, the timing of this news could mean more criticism for administration that needs to drum up black support in Georgia. Civil rights leaders, they're calling for more black nominations to these key positions. So we do know many advocates were pushing for Representative Karen Bass to head the Department of Health and Human Services, so this could be a point of contention. Reporting from Washington, I'm Ariana Manise for BNC.
Thank you, Ariana.
The voter registration deadline in Georgia is tomorrow. Early voting begins on December 14th. The runoff election day is on January 5th. Each party has a pool of potential voters approaching 2.5 million. It's just a matter of which side can drive out more voters for their candidate. Police reform took center stage as both Reverend Raphael Warnock and Senator Kelly Loeffler weighed in on calls to defund the police. Take a listen.
I was born and raised on a farm. I grew up working in the fields. I waitressed my way through school, and I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I worked hard to live the American dream and became a job creator right here in Georgia. But this type of rhetoric is a distraction from the issues at hand. The Democrats want to fundamentally change America, and the agent of change is my opponent, radical liberal Raphael Warnock, someone that has attacked police from the pulpit, someone that has attacked our military, someone that has agreed to raise taxes on hardworking Georgians as much as $2,000 per family off the bats. That's not what Georgians need to get through this pandemic and get our economy going. I'm fighting for the American dream every day.
Okay, Reverend, you're going to have an opportunity to respond to those things because I know Greg is going to get to them. It's his turn to ask you a question.
Yeah, I have a question on that same topic. You've been attacked for comments you made from the pulpit about law enforcement and the military, foreign policy, among others. You've also said they're taken out of context, but you made these remarks in a public forum. Why shouldn't Georgians take them at face value?
Look, it's clear to me that my opponent is going to work really hard, spending millions of dollars of her own money trying to push a narrative about me because she's clearly decided that she does not have a case to be made for why she should stay in that seat. I have worked my whole life to pull people together. I've been working on criminal justice reform. I've worked alongside law enforcement officers to do that work. Several years ago, I actually brought together the law enforcement officers here in this city, the chief of police, the Black Lives Matter activists, the sitting attorney general, families, parents, all in my church, focused on working on these issues that we've seen emerge time and time again. And we need somebody who knows how to bring people together rather than using these issues as a political point to be made. These issues are tragic, and our law enforcement officers lay it on the line every day. They have an ally with me. I just think that you can affirm what law enforcement officers do and hold them accountable.
The Senate runoff will have a big impact on the Biden-Harris administration and the balance of power in Washington. Joining us now to talk more about tonight's Georgia election runoff and the debate, as well as your votes, is C.K. Hoffler, president of the National Bar Association, which is the largest organization of predominantly black attorneys and judges in the country. Welcome, Mr. Hoffler.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Mrs. I apologize for that. So we just saw the first time a head-to-head debate between these candidates here. We saw attacks on both sides, and they touched on several key issues: the economy, coronavirus, the election. What do you think was the biggest takeaway during this debate, and who was the clear winner?
Well, I think that, honestly, Reverend Raphael Warnock was the winner because he answered questions. He answered the questions, and he didn't just repeat like a puppet a theme. If you notice, Senator Loeffler, what she did is she just basically repeated radical leftist Raphael Warnock is XYZ. She didn't, there were three really critical issues that she failed to answer that people really have a right to know. One, where does she stand as it relates to President Trump? Does she believe that the elections are closing, that Georgia is a blue state and that President Trump has lost? Or does she believe something else? That's number one. Secondly, is she loyal to the Secretary of State or to the governor that appointed her, or to President Trump? That's really important. And thirdly, when it came to the question about Black Lives Matter and how she would reach out to minorities and basically ordinary people, she had no response for that. She equated her experience growing up on a farm, being a waitress throughout high school and college, to that of the ordinary people, or essential workers here in Georgia. I think that was completely not credible. Reverend Reverend Warnock, I believe, did answer most of the questions. I think he did tackle the issues head on. Obviously, he had themes. His theme was, he represents the ordinary people. His theme was that the senator was the wealthiest senator in the U.S. Senate, and she is detached from Georgians. Those were his themes. The whole issue of policing reform, they both had conflicting statements, and so the voters of Georgia will have to just look that up. The senator said that she never voted, or she didn't vote in favor of cutting police budgets, and Dr. Warnock said she did. So that's just going to be a fact question. I'm a trial lawyer, so for me, either she did or she didn't. It's not very, very complicated. I know the answer to it, but it is either she did or she didn't. Policing reform, I think it's very clear. Reverend Warnock has been pretty consistent of where he stood or where he stands on policing reform and on the issues that she attacked him on. She did certainly take things out of proportion, and she repeatedly called him a radical. She made a couple of comments that made me cringe, that some could interpret as being slightly racist, even using terms like dark, but that's the rhetoric. She was repeating the rhetoric of the party 100%. So I do think that Dr. Warnock came out ahead in this debate because he did make you feel like he is the voice of the people in Georgia. And one thing that's clear is there are a lot of black and brown people in Georgia, and there are a lot of rural Georgians who are not black and brown, who are in need of health care, in need of basic services during this pandemic. And I believe that is probably what is resonating right now with Georgians. And I think that is another reason why I think he came out ahead.
Yeah, and the state of Georgia is in the national spotlight for several reasons. One of them, civil rights groups in the Peach State filed a lawsuit this past week, actually, against the Secretary of State, alleging nearly 200,000 voters were purged from the registration list, and the American Civil Liberties Union says that those voters were likely young people, people with low income, people of color. In your take as an attorney, does this amount to voter suppression?
It does, and I've got to disclose for the record, I'm one of the lawyers representing the plaintiffs in this case. So I have to disclose that. I, along with Joe Griggs, who's also a National Bar member, I'm a trial lawyer by trade. And so the plaintiffs are Rainbow Push Coalition, from Reverend Jackson as well, Transformative Justice Coalition, as well as Black Lives Matter Fund. And so I do have the honor of representing them. This is classic voter suppression, without a doubt. And if, for instance, the Secretary of State believes that the information that has been uncovered by experts is faulty, then where's the beef? Then he should be in a position of presenting to the court why and how there's been no violation of the law, of federal law, in the way that over 197,000 Georgians have been purged from the roll. They have to come clean on that. And so we've asked for injunctive relief. I just wanted to disclose that I am one of the lawyers, so I do know intimately a lot of the details about that litigation because I'm knee deep in it.
Tell us, what is the key reason? Now, there were addresses that the Secretary of State has said that was the reason why these voters were purged from the registration list. But your side, you guys don't agree that is the reason.
No, that's not the reason. We have the evidence, and this is something that will be presented at the hearing, of people who didn't move, people who knew nothing about being purged. And so when you have people who are on that list, who have not moved, like the Secretary of State claimed, who should not properly be on that list, that's a problem. And I don't mean one or two, thousands. There are hundreds and thousands of people that are on that list. And so it should not be the job of these organizations, the plaintiffs, to notify these people that they've been purged from the roll. That's not their job. That's what the Secretary of State is supposed to do, because the Secretary of State is the one that purged them. And the fact that, based on our information, most of these, or the majority of these voters that have been purged, are black and brown and young people is very significant. That is significant. It can lead you to believe that there's something sinister going on. But this is a nonpartisan effort. It's nonpartisan. We just want people who are illegally and wrongfully purged from the rolls to get back. to be put back on the rolls and so that they can vote. That's all we want. And frankly, it's nonpartisan. Because the Republican Party has now filed a motion to intervene in this litigation because they feel somehow that the Secretary of State, who has the entire state of Georgia, all the lawyers and outside lawyers representing him, somehow they believe that the representation is inadequate. And so the Republican Party and the RNC need to help supplement the legal counsel. That's really something very interesting. And that speaks to something completely sinister because the desire to have people who are wrongfully and illegally purged to put back and allowed to vote, that should be something that every American should want to see happen, and it's not partisan. Certainly, if you've been wrongfully purged from the rolls, you don't want to see others in that position. You want people to have the right to vote. So I don't see why the Republican Party, quite frankly, feels that it needs to take an issue in this unless they had something to do with the illegal purging of these voters in Georgia, which I hope is not the case. But if they did have something to do with that, then okay, they should be in the litigation. But short of that, and they'd have to admit that they had something to do with the purging, the illegal purging of the voters. But short of that, they should not be a party in this litigation whatsoever. We have 3 plaintiffs that are bringing suit against the Secretary of State, and we have a hearing this Thursday at 10 o'clock a.m. where a judge will listen to the evidence and make some determinations. It's just that simple.
All right, some very serious allegations in this lawsuit. Thank you so much, C.K. Hoffler, president of the National Bar Association, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back with much more.